Hello and welcome to Marketing Speak. I'm your host, Stefan Spencer, and I'm very excited today to have Rand Fishkin with us. Rand is the co-founder and CEO of Sparktoro. He's also my co-author on the first two editions of the Art of SEO. Rand has dedicated his professional life to helping people do better marketing through his blogging, videos, speaking, and his book, Lost and Founder, which is an incredible piece about his trials and tribulations and wins and losses with having a venture-backed Moz.com company, which he founded. Rand, it's so great to have you on the show.
Yeah, Stefan, great to be here. Always good to see you, my friend.
Yeah. First of all, I want to let our listeners know that you were on my other podcast, Get Yourself Optimized, and we talked about your book, Lost and Founder, and some of the challenges that you had interacting, dealing with the VCs who kind of muscled you out, essentially, or kind of made life really difficult for you.
Yeah. Let's see. I think my experience with Moz in venture was I regret taking venture capital. I think the VCs that I worked with were some of the best out there. And I would, if anyone said, oh, well, which venture capitalist should I work with? I would say, you should work with Michelle and Brad. They're top of the heap. But it's kind of a rotten heap. Like it's not a great deal, not only for founders, but I think for a lot of folks are waking up to this, right? For employees and team members, for a lot of businesses that come to rely on venture-backed companies and then realize that being venture-backed does not mean you will be around for a long time. In fact, usually it means the opposite, because 95 out of 100 of those companies go out of business real fast. I think they have a higher failure rate than restaurants do. So it's a little bit of an odd ecosystem in a whole bunch of ways, with a bunch of unnatural seeming behavior. And I'm glad we got to chat about it, because I think hopefully many folks can listen to that interview and take away the nuts and bolts and evaluate whether that's really the path they want to go down.
Right. And would you say that writing the book was cathartic for you?
Oh, so cathartic. Honestly, it was like a decade of therapy.
That's awesome. Yeah. And how long did it take to go from start to finish with that book?
Let's see. I pitched publishers in January of 2016, and the book came out in May 2018. So a little over 2 years. The writing process itself was about 18 months, and then there's sort of all the other things that go into a book. Penguin Random House, Stefan, was nothing like our experience with O'Reilly, which was very direct, very back and forth, very fast. PRH, much more like a Woody Allen writer movie from the 1970s, just very, very formal in a lot of ways. Fun and interesting to see, but really different.
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah. So speaking of O'Reilly, now we're starting the 4th edition. So that is
amazing.
Yeah.
I'm so glad to hear that.
Yeah, it's a long time coming. It's been 5 years, and the book will come out probably in early 2022, because it's going to take a number of months to get the book done, because we're just starting now.
All right. Well, I have got to get me a copy so I can put it on the shelf behind here and say, look at this amazing book that I did not contribute to.
Yeah. Your contributions still live on, even though it was a couple.
I always refer people to it still, because I think if you want to learn SEO, that's the way to do it.
Oh, thank you. And like 1,000 pages here, there's a bunch of content in here that is still from you, and it's tried and true, best practice that will probably live on into the 4th edition too.
Amazing.
Yeah. So let's talk about Sparktoro and social media and the kinds of capabilities that marketers now have through Sparktoro that, frankly, I don't think existed before Sparktoro. I'm so excited to tell I always wax poetic about Sparktoro.
Yeah, you've been an amazing supporter and evangelist for us, and we can't thank you enough. But it's been really interesting, right? Because we we're sort of collecting a new kind of data in a new kind of way and then making it accessible in a new and different way, which has been fun and fascinating.
Yeah. Yeah. So let's contrast a pre-Sparktoro tool with now having Sparktoro. Like, for example, follower wonk, which is really, really cool. And I actually use it still, but I definitely use Sparktoro more often. Let's say that I'm looking for journalists in a particular category, like online retail. I could put in online retail journalist into follower wonk and find people who have Twitter accounts and in their bio have used those 3 words.
Yep.
That's
and
pretty
you could,
cool.
you could do the same thing in Google, right? You can go, whatever, online retailer journalist, site:/twitter.com, and you can get pretty good results, right?
Yeah. Well, except there's the difference is with follower wonk, it does isolate it to the bio, to the profile.
And very conveniently in follower wonk as well, you can sort by follower count, and you can filter on all these mechanics and those sorts of things. There's other tools like this, right? Cision, and in the PR world, right? Digital PR world, there's tools like Cision and Meltwater, Just Reach Out, right? Where you can identify journalists specifically. They're basically big databases of journalists that are maintained. The challenge I had with all these products, and I know you have had this as well, Stefan, is one, journalists aren't the only people that we want to reach out to, right? That if you are trying to reach your audience, you want to know all the places they pay attention, not just, oh, well, here's a news publication that they read, right? I might want podcasts that they listen to, for example. I might want webinars that they attend. I'm interested in YouTube channels that they subscribe to. I want to know all of the blogs and websites, whether they're news and media or something entirely different, industry publications. I want to know all of those. And ideally, I'm not interested in the one that gets the most traffic or has the most followers. That's sort of it's almost like the Instagram influencer way of thinking about it. Like I always think that it's really strange that people go after a high follower count rather than relevant audience, right? So if I want to reach, let's say fiction authors, right? I have a new class. It's specifically for aspiring fiction authors and existing fiction authors. Maybe I have a new journaling product. I don't know what it is, but whatever we're making, I want to reach fiction authors. So I don't care about being in whatever, USA Today, which has, a large total reach. I care about, hey, what are the niche publications that fiction authors pay the most attention to? Can I find those? And Sparktoro works rather than having a database of journalists or sources of influence, it has a database of human being profiles. And then it says, oh, you want to reach these profiles? This is what they pay attention to. And that methodology is what makes it unique from every other product on the planet.
Right. So in other words, if I wanted to understand what my audience who is, let's say, talking about a particular topic, certain keyword or a certain hashtag or whatever, I can look at that audience in aggregate and see what podcasts they listen to, what YouTube channels they subscribe to, social accounts they follow, and websites they visit, all with Sparktoro. And
that's right.
Nothing else that does that, correct?
So to my mind, we have been searching high and low because, well, in startup world, it's really nice to have competitors because then that means you have an established market. And I am not aware currently of a product that does anything like this. So right now, I think Sparktoro is unique. I'm sure other people are doing it. In fact, I know that some big market research agencies do this on a custom basis for their customers, right? They'll go take a database of, I don't know, let's say we have a specialty food store online, right? And we take a database of our customers, we give it to a market research firm, they go plug those email addresses into something like Clearbit or Full Contact, get back all the social data, crawl all those URLs and figure out, okay, what do people who shop at Rand and Steffen's online food store, what do they pay attention to? Where can they reach more people like them? It's a great methodology. It's super, super valuable for us. And it's probably going to cost us $50,000 to $100,000 in 6 months of this market research time. And Casey and I, my co-founder and I at Sparktoro, were like, could we do that in 3 seconds? Yes, we can do, right? We just have to have a big enough database of all of the social profiles from, whatever is LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, Reddit, YouTube, Quora, Medium, all these places. And so that's exactly what Sparktoro is. It's a giant database that's sort of sampled of all this data, as opposed to a custom one-off report for each client. And that has been working really well.
Yeah, it's amazing. I love it. And any chance I can, I love to demo it, because it's not good enough just to show a screenshot or a report. It's so powerful just to get the audience to participate and say, give me a keyword, give me a competitor URL or a competitor social account, and boom, they're seeing stuff.
I am always down to do the demos. I had some fun actually the other day on Twitter. I posted a short video where I had been explaining to someone who emailed me how to do a particular kind of Sparktoro search. And then people were responding and saying like, hey, could you find this audience for me? So I filmed a couple more videos and posted those. And it's fun, right? In 2 or 3 minutes, you can find, in this case, we were looking for executives at charter schools in the United States, right? And how do I reach executives at charter schools? I've got this product for them, or I think they were trying to do marketing of some kind. And, where am I going to reach those folks? And being able to answer that quickly is incredible, because, prior to this product being out in the wild, I don't know how I would have done it. Right. Yeah. You'd Google around and you'd sort of ask around. Maybe you'd run some surveys, do some interviews. Maybe you'd use that market research process, but it's really time consuming and expensive. It's just data you couldn't have at your fingertips. And now it is.
Yeah. So let's go through a few use cases for our listener of how they might use this capability. So let's say that they are interested in getting on podcasts as a guest. Typically what would happen is might go to chartable.com. They might go to the Apple Podcasts app and
Listen Notes is a pretty good podcast search engine. I like that a lot.
Yep. Right. So they're going to these different tools to see what podcasts are popular. They might search in a category, or go peruse different category navigation to get into, let's say, marketing if they're a marketing consultant or expert. So that's one way of doing it. But another way is to see what the audience that they're trying to reach, let's say that audience is, I don't know, maybe enterprise level technology companies, or maybe it's online retailers,
like CTOs or something. Yeah.
So they need to figure out, well, what podcast would a CTO of a, let's say, retail establishment, what would they be listening to? And I don't know where I'd find that on Chartable or Apple Podcasts or anything like that, but I could figure that out using Sparktoro, right?
That's exactly right. So you could go essentially to the tool and say, my audience uses these words in their profile, which is one of the search drop-down options. And then you could type in, CTO retail, and now you will find people whose bio includes the word CTO and the word retail. And you can see that, Werner Vogels and Mark Andreessen are well followed by these folks, and the McKinsey Quarterly Audio Show and the This Week in Startups are well-engaged podcasts, the Speaking Business podcast, the Build Your Salon with Phil Jackson, the Film Stuff podcast, right? So yeah, this is a very doable thing.
It's amazing. And you can see what percentage overlap there is between the audience that is built out of your search query inside of Sparktoro and that particular podcast or that particular YouTube channel if you're in the YouTube section of the report.
Right. So yeah, McKinsey Quarterly Audio is listened to by 14, or it's not, we don't know if they're listened to for sure. We know that they are engaged with on one or more of their public profiles by 14% of this audience. So
yeah,
there you go, right? A reasonable thing. And then, you know, a lot of the time I recommend that people go dive into a tab called Audience Insights and, you know, check out hashtags like that are paid attention to and used by this audience, right? So they might say, oh yeah, I want folks who use the hashtag e-commerce or e-commerce and retail, and let me go see what they're paying attention to. And you can get a little more complicated in your query structure too. It supports or, you know, a few Boolean queries. And then there's also a comparison system. So if, for example, you're like, well, let me see what CTOs are like in retail versus CTOs in e-commerce. And let's check out the overlap, you know, Venn diagram of those two. Oh, they're more different than I thought. Let me go analyze them individually. That can be, yeah, good use case too. But
yeah.
I don't know how in the world you would do this if you didn't have this data. It'd be such a pain.
Yeah. And you can do competitor intelligence or research as well. For example, let's say that your top competitor, I don't know, let's say you're an SEO and one of your competitors is Sear.
Sure.
Okay, so you could put in Sear's website as one of the options. One of the pull down options there is people who visit this website.
Yep.
And then put in the URL. Or you could say people who follow Will, who's the founder of Sear,
Sure.
you could put his Twitter URL, his Twitter account into
or his
the search.
Facebook or his LinkedIn. Yep.
And that's another thing too. You connect up all of their different social accounts across the different social platforms whenever possible. It doesn't always happen, but
so Twitter, you're right to start there because Twitter is where we have the most information because that's where the largest number of publicly accessible profiles is. But almost all the time they're connected to, you know, several other profiles, right? So when we, for example, look at Sear Interactive, right? You can go click on what they're following and you can see, you know, a lot of people who follow Sear Interactive also follow and pay attention to Danny Sullivan, the public search liaison for Google. And, you know, Sparktoro shows it's got his Twitter, but it has his official website, his Facebook, his Instagram, his LinkedIn, his YouTube account. You know, for Search Engine Journal, it's got their Reddit and their Pinterest and their YouTube and Instagram and LinkedIn and all these different places. So yes, we will connect up those dots. And I think, you know, there's two reasons for that. One is you can often get interesting data that is in one profile, it's not in another, right? So if someone has something in their Pinterest bio or about section, their Facebook about section, and it's not in their Twitter or it's not in their LinkedIn, we'll still aggregate that all together so that we can say, oh, these words and phrases apply to this person's official, you know, sort of presence online. And that wealth of data that you can get from public profiles across platforms is really, really valuable. So we're just on the verge of adding a lot more LinkedIn data, probably beginning of January. And then next year, we're going to be adding a lot more Instagram. Instagram's been a funny one because Steph, and I'm sure you know this well, right? But like there's this whole world of Instagram influencers. And one of the things that we did not want to do with Sparktoro was get pigeonholed into, oh, you help with Instagram influencers and influencer marketing, right? We did not want to be in that world. And so at launch, we intentionally focused on other networks. We have data from Instagram, but other networks. And so Sparktoro has not been a great place to find sort of influential Instagram accounts. I think next year we'll probably be launching a tab that is specifically what and who do people follow on Instagram who match the criteria of your audience, and then you can do targeting there. That's, I think, really important, especially because if you're doing Facebook advertising right now, they keep pulling back more and more data. Like you go into the Facebook ad interface and, well, you know this better than anyone, but right, they're taking away all of your different options for targeting. You know, what was there 2 years ago, 3 years ago, especially before Cambridge Analytica, holy crap, right? They had all these different ways that you could target people. And so now in Facebook advertising, if you want to reach an audience that is exactly the customers you want to go after, it's a royal pain to get that audience nailed. And I think that one of the things Sparktoro can do is help to illuminate which accounts those are, because that's still an option for you in Facebook ads, is to say, oh, you know, whatever. My audience follows the everywhereist on Instagram. So like, give me, you know, show my ads to her followers.
Right. And another thing too that is important that relates to this connecting up of different social accounts across platforms is you aggregate the numbers of the people that they reach.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
So you can sort by the highest reach in a report and see that, oh, this person might be huge on, let's say, Twitter, but they're nowhere on Instagram. They're just tiny.
Yeah.
Or
yeah,
vice versa.
Exactly. You can export that data and you'll get like a giant XLS or CSV with all the columns of all the following data, and then you could decide, right? And you can filter even inside the tool, right? If I hop over to social, I can filter based on, hey, I only want social, you know, people who have social accounts on GitHub, for example. Maybe if you're in CTO engineering world, right, you might want those. Or if you're in the websites tab, right, you could filter on, oh, I want to filter based on domain authority, the Moz score, or I want to filter based on showing me the popular accounts that everyone pays attention to versus not, that kind of thing.
Yeah. Now, would you give a name to this sort of category of product? Because like social listening is a category of product for
right.
or social monitoring, but what is this called?
What is this? Oh, this is a great phenomenal question, Steph. When we were creating the company, right, and I spent like the first 18 months while Casey's building the product, I'm out doing market research and trying to understand our field and all that kind of thing. And it is the weirdest thing in the world, right? SEO is really clear. So SEO, you say it, everybody knows what it is. I'm trying to get rankings in Google. This process, which we have been calling audience research, right? But audience or audience intelligence, this field, if you say audience research or audience intelligence to someone, they're like, well, maybe
what the heck is that?
What the heck is that? And that's kind of the best we can do, because when we said, hey, how do you go about figuring out what your audience pays attention to, what podcasts they listen to, what websites they visit, what social accounts they follow? Everybody said, oh, I do that work, but I have no word for it. And so that makes categorization really challenging and difficult. But there you go. So I think we're essentially trying to category create, even though there's no doubt in my mind, this is a practice that's been around since the 1950s, right? People in advertising and marketing have been constantly trying to figure out, what does my audience pay attention to? Where can I reach them? I think for most of the 20th century, this was done in a very blunt force, demographics only kind of way, right? You'd basically say, I mean, not to rag on the 20th century advertising world, but a lot of it was, CTOs are, this gender, this race group, this demographic group, this age group, this income group. Let me go find publications that reach those demographics, and that's where we'll do our advertising. Which is just,
yeah.
I mean, awful in terms of targeting, right?
Yeah, but what's interesting about this situation is it reminds me of a blog post you wrote a little while ago about demand generation and how very few people were searching for Mr. Rogers, but there was a pretty steady audience of that. You know which blog post I'm talking about that you wrote, right? Then you spoke about or wrote about in the article how this movie, the documentary about Mr. Rogers, What's the Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood? What was the name of the
Yeah,
movie?
the Tom Hanks. What is that documentary? The documentary is called something in My Neighborhood. I think it is. Won't You Be My Neighbor?
Won't You Be My Neighbor? Right. So people
Yeah.
started searching
Mhm.
for Won't You Be My Neighbor, and the search volume for Mr. Rogers picked up, but nobody was searching for Would You Be My Neighbor until the movie came out. And
Yeah.
so that generated all this demand. And what you're doing is kind of a parallel here, and is creating demand for something people didn't know they needed or was even possible.
Yeah, and that is, I think that's one of the harder things to do in the marketing universe, right? As opposed to serving existing demand, right? So I want to rank for these keywords that people are already searching for higher than my competitors so that I can attract people who want those products or services. More difficult is saying sort of, hey, there's a product or service that previously either didn't exist or did exist, but people didn't know about it and they didn't know they should want it. And so how do we create demand for that, right? If you told me in January of this year, hey, you need to get an N95 mask, I'd have been like, well, do I know what that is? Is that a medical thing or what is that, right? But demand has been generated
Yeah. Am I going to
by,
be sanding something and I don't want to
yeah,
breathe in the sawdust? Like,
right, yeah, like is that construction or a doctor's office? I don't know. But now there's obviously that sort of demand, and I I think that in a funny way, there's a big parallel with how Sparktoro helps and what it's doing on that front, because if you are in a space where there's already a ton of demand happening, right? People already know they want your particular product. Search is a really good way to go after that, right? Search is a primary channel for that.
yeah.
However, if you're in sort of the world of that we're in, right? The world of how do I figure out where to reach, how do I take this new product and get it to market? You need to create demand. And that requires knowing where you can reach the audience of people who will be interested in the product. I think that's a problem I'm very excited to solve. And I'll be honest, Stefan, I'm very excited to solve it without just pouring money into Google and Facebook. Like it would bring me great joy to think that Sparktoro is a product that people not only use and find valuable, but also that the end result outcome of people using it is that more of their marketing efforts and advertising dollars and partnerships and co-marketing and, whatever, podcast guesting and all these kinds of things happen in the niche sources of influence on the web, right? Happen in press and media, happen in blogs, happen on podcasts, happen on YouTube channels, rather than, well, I don't know how we're going to reach this audience. I guess we'll just bid on the Google Display Network. I guess we'll just bid in Facebook and Instagram. I guess we'll just, bid on YouTube ads. They
It's
don't
not
need your
quite
money.
spray and pray, but it's kind of like dump your wallet out and pray.
It really is. And the advertising firms are Google and Facebook continue to control more and more of that market. And that is about to accelerate at an even faster pace as Chrome, I think it's by 2022. So sometime next year, right? They're going to get rid of third-party cookies, which, Apple and Facebook are having this big fight right now. I don't know if you saw Facebook taking out these like full page ads in all these US publications, complaining about how Apple was hurting small businesses by making Safari cut off third-party cookies and accept consent from Facebook, blah, blah, blah. And, it's obviously ridiculous. I don't think anybody believes Facebook at all, but regardless
I
of
feel
that,
so sorry for Facebook. I should just write
I
them a
know, my
check
God.
and mail it in.
It must suck to run the world and be incredibly rich and powerful. It's just so hard on them. But the end result of this, I think, is going to be that essentially, if you are not in their ecosystem, right? If you don't have, if you're not participating in the Facebook advertising, Google advertising game, you will have even less opportunity to reach your target audience. And they know that, and in many ways they're happy about it, right? They lobbied and crafted a lot of GDPR and the California privacy laws to frankly bias this regulation toward them so that they reap a ton of benefit from this. And the tough part about that is the more people that bid in an ecosystem, right? So if, Facebook has 1 million advertisers, each ad slot, right, reaching a new person costs more. And when they have 10 million, that number goes up. And when they have 50 million, it goes up even more. And so if you say, I want to reach this audience through Facebook's advertising network, and 50 other advertisers are going after it, the number that you're paying, right, is just so much higher. And so essentially all of the net margin that comes from reaching customers pours into Google and Facebook's coffers. And I think that's wrong. I think it's fundamentally unfair to the market to control all this advertising, not through the genius of your technology, but rather through the power of your regulatory influence and your rent-seeking behaviors and all the bad things that monopolies do in an economic ecosystem. And it really, really sucks as just a small business or medium business to say, well, I feel like I have no choice. I can't go and sponsor the Marketing Speak podcast because I don't know if they reach my audience, but I know that Facebook, if I put a bunch of money into there, they'll figure out the right people to target. So I guess I'll do that.
Yeah. Or Google, if you want to just spend money on Google ads. So here's an example. Let's say that you are selling sunglasses online. You want to bid on sunglasses or some similar kind of keyword. Might spend $10-20 per click.
Yeah.
And then let's say the glasses are
sunglasses.
Right. Well, let's say it costs you $800 to sell one pair of sunglasses that might be $100. That's crazy.
Yep. That's exactly the world that we're heading toward, which is why you see so many advertising games being saturated, just entirely saturated by a lot of venture-backed companies that can afford to lose money until they gain market traction. And so, sunglasses isn't probably a perfect example, but something like, I don't know if you read some of the stories about WeWork recently, but WeWork is a great example of this, where they essentially sold or rented out office space at lower than market rates, right? And they'd go into a market, they'd look at what are the independent, small co-working spaces offering. All right, we're going to undercut that by 25%. If they bring their price down, we'll undercut it again. And we don't mind losing billions of dollars a quarter in every city across the world on this, because over time we'll make it up in volume. And then when they all go out of business, we'll jack up the rates so that we can be profitable again. Oof, that business model is very hard to compete with if you are not, backed by, what's the Japanese?
SoftBank.
Yeah, SoftBank, right? Whew. Just very, very difficult. And this, this happens in a lot of different fields. It happens in niches in e-commerce. It happens in a lot of private equity-backed markets, and it's
well, it doesn't just happen because the VCs are out there funding this stuff. It's also happening because Amazon's in pretty much every space, and they want to buy positions for everything from sunglasses to N95 masks.
Yeah, that was their whole playbook, right? The growth playbook at Amazon was, for most of the 2001 to 2012 era, Amazon was the cheapest place to buy things online. And then once they became the habit, they became one of the more expensive places to buy things online. I was just on Amazon last night looking at some specialty like pantry ingredients for Japanese cuisine, which I've been cooking a bunch of Japanese food lately. And, they've got a nice selection. They can deliver it fast. It's in my Prime account, blah, blah, blah. Super convenient in all these different ways. But then I go to the Japanese specialty foods website. I think it was SF Mart, which is, I'm sure you're familiar with from your time in the Bay Area. Like, oh, they have that same fancy soy sauce for a third of the price. What the hell, Amazon? How are you charging? It's because I don't know what the price should be. And Amazon is counting on me to just take the default behavior, which is add to cart, checkout. It's so easy, right? As opposed to, hey, maybe I should check and see if they're actually charging me a reasonable rate for this stuff. Yeah, their miso paste, the little box of miso paste was $15. And I was like, gosh, it looks familiar. I think that's at my local grocery store where it's $4.95.
It's
Amazon.
It's like airport pricing.
Yeah.
It's like, and I'll get that water for $10.
And Amazon counts on you not sort of doing the research step, because you've been trained over the last decade and through your Prime account that it's just more convenient, easier to deal with Amazon, and so they can jack up those prices. And that's that's the reality of sort of living in a late stage capitalism world. But as an advertiser or as a small and medium business, you can end around a lot of these options by saying, okay, where did Rand and other consumers like him learn about Japanese cooking? Oh, justonecookbook.com. That's where a lot of people who talk about Japanese cooking, that's a website that is popular with them. That's a social account that's popular with them. Could we do some advertising and marketing there so that before Rand goes to his Amazon account and starts searching around for this stuff, he sees SF Mart's ads, or he sees the promotion, the co-marketing arrangement between Just One Cookbook and SF Mart, and they've created a relationship there. Maybe that is a way to do it. Maybe we could create a page that ranks on SF Mart that compares Amazon's prices against ours with some of the key Japanese pantry ingredient price. All sorts of marketing options if you know where to reach your customers.
Yeah, really cool. And let's say that another example, let's say that you're trying to reach people who read the Robb Report.
Yeah.
High wealth individuals. What are they doing online? What social accounts are they following? What podcasts are they listening to? What
That's a fascinating one.
YouTube channels are they subscribed to?
I haven't tried that one yet, but I'm going to try it right now, because this is a very difficult audience to reach too, in terms of, they're
and you can reach them multiple ways through your tool. For example, you could say, let's put in the Robb Report's Twitter profile,
sure,
and find the audience that follows that Twitter account. We could put in the URL of the Robb Report and say websites that
are visited by those people.
Yep. We could put in just the phrase, the Robb Report, and see what people are, build an audience of people who are talking about the Robb Report. We could see if they're using a hashtag Robb Report. And then those people who are, let's say, participating in that online community, and hey, use the hashtag Robb Report, and we'll send some free swag to some of you over the holidays or whatever. And so there's lots of different ways we could reach those kinds of people.
Yeah, this is fascinating. I don't actually know these other brands, but 25% of the people who read the Robb Report or engage with them on one or more social channels follow this Luxury Society, which is a website. It's a popular Twitter account. They've got a big Facebook presence. We have their Vimeo page, which apparently has a lot of followers on Vimeo of all places. And then LUXUO, which is like a luxury news, LuxUO. Departures.com. I think I've heard of Departures magazine.
Yeah, I get that. And
Okay.
throw it
Yeah.
out as soon as I get it.
But then like Ritz,
I recycle it, I
Ritz
should say.
Carlton is in here. W Magazine, Architectural Digest, Just Lux, Luxe. So
Okay.
yeah, there's a whole bunch. Oh, Harper's Bazaar, sure, makes sense. So yeah, you get this like kind of profile of the audience through the sources of influence that they pay attention to, and then I think it's a fascinating discovery process to then realize how big your marketing opportunities are compared to the sort of very narrow niche of, oh, I want to target whatever high net worth individuals and luxury buyers on Facebook and Google, which are that's one of the most expensive audiences you can possibly reach, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Now you get to something that you call hidden gems.
Mm.
Let's talk about that in relation to audience who follow the Rob Report.
Sure. So yeah, I mentioned, at the top of any search, right? The things that we show are default ordered by the percent of the audience that pays attention to them, right? So in the case of the Rob Report, the biggest overlap is with Condé Nast Traveler, where it's 36%, right? So 36% of social accounts across these 10 social networks that we cover who follow the Rob Report or engage with them also follow or engage with Condé Nast Traveler. So that's a big percentage. If we go into the filters, so Casey and I, in early conversations with lots of folks like yourself, right, marketers who do this work daily, they kind of told us, all right, in many sectors that I know well, I already know the big players. Like, if you search for SEOs and you show me Danny Sullivan and Google Search Console and I don't know, Dr. Pete, like, I know those people. Show me the hidden gems. Who are the people and publications that I maybe have not heard of that are reaching a substantive group of these individuals? And so we created this filter called Hidden Gems, which essentially shows relative high engagement to their size of following or size of audience, but doesn't have the largest necessarily percent of audience. And so when we do this in Rob Report, instead of Condé Nast Traveler and Travel and Leisure and Luxury Society and Nat Geo Travel being at the top, if I say, show me only the gems, it will filter to those high engagement, lower total follower count ones. And that includes new publications I am not familiar with. One is Luxury Daily, Luxury Travel Advisor, ILTM. I don't know what ILTM is. Stacy Maui, Telegraph Luxury. I think that's the British brand. Eat, Love, Savor Magazine, Christine Kirk, Bloomberg Pursuits, Andrew Harper's Hideaway Resort. So, a whole bunch of, I'm not actually familiar with all these publications, but a whole bunch of people and publications that reach 7, 8, 9, 10% of the Rob Report's audience, but they don't have hundreds of thousands, millions of followers and audiences. They have tens of thousands. Most of these are, 60,000, 90,000, 58,000. But those might be niche opportunities for marketing of all kinds that could be less expensive and that are, in most cases, when I run this hidden gems filter, I find sources of influence that are far more reachable, right? So, in Sparktoro, the way it works is you just check a bunch of them, create a list, and then when you go to your lists, we have a partnership with Hunter.io, so we'll grab all the email addresses associated with a publication. So you could go and say, oh, well, yeah, Stacy Maui, that sounds interesting. Let's add that to a list, and then let's see if we can find, the email addresses associated with that account and that domain, and you can go do whatever kind of contact you want. In this case, it might pay more to send an Instagram DM, but we have that contact info as well. And the return on investment from going after smaller publications, more niche social sources,
Yeah.
Tends to
Bloggers,
be.
influencers, and so forth.
Yeah. Like uh, uh, you just get a much, much higher rate of return. Like people will answer your emails and they'll say yes to having you as a guest. And, you email travel and leisure. It's a tough pitch, right? That they're getting pitched by a lot of people and all these PR folks who have relationships with them already. But you reach out to, I don't know, ILTM, you have a decent shot at getting some placement there.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And you said that you look for high engagement relative to the audience size that they're reaching. Is that, in other words, high Spark score?
Yes, Sparkscore is part of that. So don't leave me.
So let's describe Spark score to our listener if they're not familiar with.
Sure. So Sparkscore is like a free tool that you can use if you're interested in sort of analyzing the true influence of any Twitter account. We only have Sparkscore publicly for Twitter right now. Inside of Sparktoro's primary product, we will look at engagement across social channels. So it's not Twitter exclusive, but Sparkscore does make up one element of that. And engagement, we're essentially looking for, when whatever it is, Stacey Maui posts on Instagram, does that get a relatively high number of likes, comments, video views? I can't actually remember if we can see those. Whatever kind of metric you can see on the platform, Pinterest pins or YouTube views, whatever it is, subscribers, do they have a relatively high percent of those engagements for their audience size? So, if I have 10,000 followers on Twitter and I get 10 retweets, that's on average on my tweets, that's pretty good. Like that's decent. That's going to be above the median for people who post. If I have 100,000 followers and I'm getting 10 retweets per, not as good, right? My engagement rate is going to be lower. And so that's how essentially the engagement ratio is calculated inside Sparktoro. We're looking for accounts that maybe don't have the total audience size that's huge, but when they publish things on their channels, they're getting very good engagement.
Yeah. Very cool. Okay. So let's talk more generally. We've been talking a lot about Sparktoro, so hopefully by now everybody has signed up. So now let's talk about where things are heading in terms of social media, where things are heading in terms of SEO. Like, let's prognosticate for a bit.
Ooh, I like it. I mean, so the social media one, what I can't decide, I can't figure out whether I think new services like TikTok, Snapchat is older, but still sort of an emerging social media player, and others. I can't decide if I think that niche fragmentation is a trend that will continue or whether it's something that does well with a sort of particular demographic, but never breaks out into a larger world. And I'm not sure whether that's the case. I think that there's also the complication with TikTok around government regulation and fears of Chinese ownership and all those kinds of things. But it is certainly, it's fascinating to imagine a world where there's a lot more competition in social. I'd love to see it. I don't think we're going to see that in search at all. Mm-hmm. I just don't think, I know there's all these new search engines coming out. There's one that's backed by the Salesforce, ex-Salesforce team, and what's his name? Mark, CEO of Salesforce, is Benioff. Benioff's an investor, right? And so there's all this like promise of, oh, well, maybe someone will try to compete with Google. I don't know. I mean, Stefan, what do you think? Like, search inside and out. Do you think someone can build a competitor to Google?
Only when the AIs come and rule the world. I think once we have autonomous general intelligence, they'll figure out how to they'll be way smarter than us. They'll build another Google killer.
Yeah, maybe. It just feels to me like the big roadblock with Google is they have 20 years of data about what people searched for, what they clicked on, what they, bounced back to the SERP and chose a different result, where they changed their search query from this thing to, oh, actually, my question is this. And I feel like that historical data, right? SERP interaction data, if you will, is such a phenomenal barrier to entry that without it, you can't build a search engine that's half as good. And I don't know. Maybe some new paradigm in search could change that, but
maybe a quantum computer with advanced artificial general intelligence that's 10,000 times smarter than a human and is able to outthink us and fractions of a second. Maybe that.
I feel like all artificial intelligence, at least today, is built on historical data, right? The whole process of AI is you take data and then you machine learn against that data to extract patterns. And nobody except Google has the patterns. Nobody has the data to analyze. And so how do you build a smarter AI without the input? That feels like it's the missing piece. Unless you know what people have looked for and been satisfied by in the past, you can't build a better one. So even if you had a much faster computer and your AI and machine learning algorithms were 100 times better than anything Google has, so what? Your data is not as good as their data, and the data is the key.
But couldn't you go direct to the data? Let's say, GPT-3. Let's use that. Sure. From OpenAI. It scours the internet and has all this data of human knowledge and is able to write a poem about Elon Musk, for example. Have you read this poem? It's pretty funny, and it's hard to believe that an AI wrote this poem. It's pretty darn good. In fact, I'm going to read a few lines from the poem. 1 second.
I feel like I saw Brittany Muller share this, because I know she's deep in the AI ML world.
Okay, I didn't learn about it from her, but anyways, here are a few lines. The instruction to GPT-3 was to write a poem in the style of Dr. Seuss about Elon Musk launching rockets with SpaceX, building electric cars at Tesla, selling flamethrowers, dating Grimes, fighting the SEC, crushing short sellers, and building brain chips. Okay, so here's one of my favorite stanzas. Then Elon Musk said, "You're not much fun, and I don't want to sue, but I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll send my Mars rovers to Red Planet you." GPT-3 wrote that. So if GPT-3 can do that, based on its understanding of how we write and what how Dr. Seuss wrote and all these different activities that Elon Musk is part of and how he thinks and everything, why can't something like GPT-3 just sidestep the whole requirement of having a lot of data about user interactions and just scour the internet and decide, like, yeah, this actually is the best poem on the internet about, I don't know, the SEC.
Sure. So here's where I feel like the, whatever you want to call it, the metaphor for these things falls down, which is GPT-3 can learn an incredible amount from what people have created, right? So it's incredibly, smart or sophisticated based on the inputs that it's got. It takes a repository of billions of web pages and, all these books, which is great. What it doesn't have is it does not know, excuse me, does not know what people have searched for in what quantities and what they were satisfied by in the query response and not satisfied by, right? So the missing element is when you're question answering, you don't necessarily want the most relevant content or the most thorough content or the most, topically modeled perfect content. You want the content that will best answer the searcher's query, implied searcher's query, which is not necessarily contained in their word, right? If they go N95 v KN95, well, what do they mean? And Google knows that an article that analyzed 12 different kinds of masks, including those two different kinds, that was relatively recently published, that has not been particularly well linked to yet, but that uses a methodology that solved a lot of people's problems in the past, and it's from a publication that people have trusted on previous versus queries around health topics. That's the one to put number one. And Google knows that from the historical data. Is GPT-3 or something like that going to be able to figure it out without that historic data? I guess the answer is maybe. It's always possible, but I think it's going to be a huge stretch without that historical data. So call me a pessimist.
Now you're an optimist from Google's perspective.
That's true. That's true. They like the way I think. No, I would say I think that in the SEO world, as far as predicting around that stuff, one thing that was really fascinating about the pandemic was you and I are both on desktop laptops right now, but desktop laptop use because of the pandemic grew dramatically. And so one of the trends that reversed for the first time in a decade, 15 years, is less mobile usage, more desktop usage, which meant a reversal of the zero-click search trend. Because on mobile, people who searched Google don't click, right? They sort of stay in Google's interface. They try and get like their instant answer. Google does all these things on mobile to keep you, in their SERP. On desktop, they do some of that too, but less. And people are much more likely to click on things on their desktop or laptop. And so I think that this year is going to be sort of like an oddity in the ever decreasing click-through rate and rise in zero-click searches. But we probably will see that emerge again, I don't know, next year or 2022, whenever vaccine rollout gets completed. And at that point, I think there'll be more fear and concern and worry again about oh man, I can rank number one for 1 million search terms and I'm still getting less traffic than when I was ranking number 3 years ago. Ooh, what do I do about that?
Yeah. So zero-click searches is a trend that's going to continue to rise over time, is your prediction. And that's not good for marketers. It's good for Google.
Very good. Very, very good for Google.
Yeah, it keeps them in the ecosystem, keeps those users in there. And does that reduce the utility of Google for users, do you think? Or are people happy to just get an instant answer and move on with their life?
Yeah, I think people are really happy to get that instant answer, stay inside Google's ecosystem. But it's very, very, very frustrating for a marketer, right? Because you have essentially what all of us are doing are creating content, answering searchers' questions, researching what our field wants, making that stuff, publishing it, and then letting Google crawl it for free, which costs us bandwidth technically, right? A few pennies every time Google comes to our site and does a big crawl. So we're paying for their bandwidth to crawl us for free so that they can steal our content, attribute it to themselves, publish it on their own google.com, and give us no benefit from that. And that benefit gets less and less over time as they send less and less traffic out and keep more of it for themselves.
What's not to like about that?
Yeah. That's a long-term ecosystem risk. Like, frankly, one of the reasons that I have done two things, right? One, started a company that is not in the SEO software space, and two, done less and less of my marketing through search rankings and sort of content that ranks in search engines, is because of that trend, right? I'm a big believer in build up my audience, an audience that cares about what I publish and sort of subscribes via email and is subscribing to my blog, is following me on social channels, as opposed to putting all my eggs in the content and SEO basket, which is really most of what I did at Moz. That's an intentional move. I feel like many more publishers are going to be going in that direction. Yes, this is part of the rise of things like Substack, and before it Medium, where folks are trying to do that. Podcasting, the rise of podcasting is, hey, let me build a loyal audience that loves hearing from me, that wants each episode, rather than trying to earn everyone's click in the search engine.
What do you think of Substack, by the way, since you brought it up?
Yeah, I think it's an interesting option. I see why it has become popular, and also I would prefer to build it myself, right? I would much prefer to own the ecosystem rather than have Substack control the environment around my email list and newsletter and those sorts of things. The easy monetization is a very nice feature. I appreciate that as well. It feels a little bit like Shopify to me, right? Where, if you can manage and build your own e-commerce store, you can save yourself a lot of money. You can do a lot more customization. You can be more on the cutting edge of, all the marketing tactics. But if you need someone to easily outsource it to, this is a nice option. That's kind of how Substack feels.
Have you looked at it from an SEO perspective?
No, is it terrible?
It's atrocious.
Yeah, I bet. I mean, I never see it ranking, right? Like I haven't seen any Substacks in the SERPs.
Yeah, it's a train wreck.
Yeah.
Oh well. Okay. Anyways, where do you see Sparktoro going in the future? I'm curious, in particular, like you mentioned, you've got a partnership with Hunter.io.
Yeah.
Do you see potentially working a partnership with something like the likes of Pitchbox, where you can do full outreach and not just get the email addresses, but do the outreach to these influencers and podcasters and so forth?
If I had to guess, I would say it's more likely we'll pursue other things before that. Reason being, the way we are conceptualizing Sparktoro and the way we've been sort of building and marketing it is really as a research tool, right? It's go get all this data about your audience that you can use for advertising, for digital PR, for outreach, for pitching, for SEO and content marketing and all that kind of stuff. But we are finding that there's a lot of broad use cases. And so we're not necessarily going super deep on one particular angle, like outreach exclusively. I think it's very probable that we've been talking to a few folks in worlds like, whatever, Just Reach Out or Pitchbox or other folks about using our API. So I wouldn't be surprised if those sorts of services use Sparktoro to get the percentage audience numbers and show that data inside their products. And I think that's a great way for us to go. We really want to be the best place to get this data, and we want to stay laser focused on that that data side. So two things that are coming pretty early next year. One is a new tab in Sparktoro that is press and media. So you'll have a specific tab where you can see, I want to know which, big and medium size press publications, everything from the Robb Report to Washington Post to New York Times, like what in that world does my audience pay attention to if I want to do sort of that media relations, PR, advertising game. So that'll be a new tab in there. And the second one that's pretty big is tracking over time. So if you were to say, oh, that CTO audience, or people who use the e-commerce hashtag, or architects in Los Angeles, or executives at charter schools, like that's my audience, and I'm always going to be targeting them. So every 2 weeks, I want you to send me an update about new things they're paying attention to, new hashtags they're using, new words and phrases they're talking about, new ways they're describing themselves, the size, how that audience size is changing. I want all that detail. I don't care so much about, pitching a new audience every few weeks. I care about this one audience and their changes in behavior over time. So that audience tracking will be something that we have probably, hopefully Q1. Those are the big things.
Okay. And we're recording this on December 23rd, 2020. So when this episode airs, it'll probably be February by then. So
excellent. So some of this stuff might be out by then. We'll follow up, and then I'll send this episode to Casey and be like, hey, I promised the people we got
to tell them we delivered already in the show notes.
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay. And let's just do a little kind of lightning round for just a couple minutes.
Love it.
Okay. Did you see the movie Social Dilemma? And if so, what are some quick thoughts about it?
Ooh, I'm a huge Tristan Harris fan. I love everything he does. That being said, I thought the movie was more biased and sensationalist than it needed to be. I thought they could have done an even stronger job by being more balanced.
Yep. Yeah, I agree. And BJ Fogg is a friend of mine, and they portrayed him as kind of the devil in that, or one of the.
Yeah.
And they took that out of context. He was talking to, I think, health professionals at a conference, and it wasn't marketers or the Illuminati or anything that he was talking to. It was really not cool that they positioned him that way. Yeah. Okay. Next question. TikTok or Instagram Reels?
If you're over 25, Instagram Reels. If you're under 25, TikTok.
Okay. Do you have a TikTok?
Nope. I had it briefly. I deleted it.
Okay. Why is that?
Once I saw I read that post that went viral on Hacker News, maybe earlier I think it was last year, about the data collection of TikTok versus Facebook. And they were sort of like, look, if Facebook scares you about what data they collect in the background, TikTok should scare you 100 times more. And here's why. I read that and was like, oh, that is a good point. You sort of look in the app and you're like, there is no reason for this. It is keystroke logging everything. That's uninstalled. Goodbye. Yeah. I don't need keystroke logging from. Yeah.
Okay. So what do you tell people in response when they ask you about, is Facebook spying on me? Is it listening to my conversations? Because I have a conversation about XYZ and then suddenly I get ads about XYZ.
I tell them it might as well be.
Okay.
Whether it actually is or not, I believe Facebook when they say that that nowadays the microphone is not picking up everything you say and da 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 da. However, human behavior is predictable if you get enough quantity of it, right? Just like we were talking about with machine learning and artificial intelligence. And so, yes, the fact that you are discussing bird feeders and also you live in this neighborhood at this time of year and you already bought something for a garden, that's why Bird Feeders is showing up. The fact that you are discussing it now because you heard birds yesterday morning and they woke you up. It's not coincidental. It's just statistically significantly correlated. And therefore, Facebook knows to show you those ads.
Yeah, makes sense. Okay. What's your favorite book? Fiction and nonfiction.
Gosh, nonfiction. Recent book that I loved. I don't know if have you checked this out? No Hard Feelings.
No.
I love this book. It is so delightfully well written, and has a bunch of fun illustrations and stuff too. Like it just sort of nails if Twitter is how you consume memes about business, No Hard Feelings is flawless in a lot of ways. And it's a great book too about bringing your emotions to work and not having to hide who you are. So I love that. Fiction, oh my gosh. A book I recently revisited that I thought was amazing was Special Topics in Calamity Physics. I love that. It was a novel from a few years ago.
Okay.
And it's about a young woman and I think a teenager and her father, and sort of mystery. It's a mystery. It's fun. Well done.
Very cool. Okay. Have you read The Diamond Age by Neil Stephenson? Oh, that's a good one.
Yeah,
that's my favorite fiction book, and it's in the age of molecular nanotechnology, so probably 20 years into the future. It's great. It's great.
Cool. Okay.
And my favorite nonfiction book is Freakonomics.
That's a good one too. I think that's on my shelf right over there.
Yeah. Very cool. All right.
What else is in our lightning round?
Okay. This is going to be the last one. What is the highlight for you of 2020? Like what's been I don't know, just a moment of great insight, or a magic moment that happened that you want to share as the last thing?
Let's see. I will say two moments. One was in September, Sparktoro went from sort of losing money every month to being profitable. That's huge for us. Just gives us infinite runway, gives us the ability to make a whole new set of strategic and tactical decisions. And was very exciting, especially considering earlier in the year when the pandemic hit, we were just, we were worried that maybe our timing, it wasn't that the company was a bad idea, but our timing was going to kill us because we hadn't launched before the pandemic hit. So that was a big one for us professionally. And then personally, I've been quarantined with Geraldine for 10 months, almost exactly now. And it's not that bad. Like, it's not just that we really love each other and care about each other. It's also that apparently we can spend every day together for 10 months and not get too sick of each other and do okay. And that is pretty damn amazing, because I have talked to a lot of people who are struggling at home with whatever, romantic partners or kids or roommates or by themselves. And I feel like we are just some of the luckiest people in the world on that vector.
Yeah. Well, that's beautiful. And it's not luck. It's good fortune. It's the divine timing or serendipity or something more than just random luck. Right?
Yeah. It's good decision-making and choosing a great partner and then putting in the work to, I think a lot of people mistake love, especially long-term love, as being something that you like fall into, or it happens and it's mystical and inexplicable. And I don't think that's true. I think love is an active effort that you put work into, just like you would a job, just like you would a hobby. And when you make investments in that love, it pays dividends in love back from your partner. And Geraldine and I both have been putting in work and getting dividends back from that.
Oh, that's beautiful. Yeah. Love is a verb.
Love is a verb. Thank you. Excellent.
Yeah.
Beautifully
You know,
said.
one thing my wife and I do every day, not quite without fail, but I'd say certainly 9 times out of 10, is we end our day with at least 3 appreciations for the other.
Oh,
We do that
yeah.
before we fall asleep, and it really makes a difference.
That's a great idea, Stefan. It's that habit building. It seems small, but the older you get and the more time you spent together, the more those practices build on each other. I think that's beautiful.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's a great way to end the day. And then the way that I start my day is I don't always do this again, but I try to do it most of the time. As soon as my feet hit the floor getting out of bed, I say today is going to be a great day.
Huh.
Yeah.
Huh.
I learned that one from BJ Fogg, actually. It's called the Maui habit. He gave it the name, the Maui habit, and it
Love
makes a
it.
huge difference. So try those 2 things.
Okay. Okay. I will. I appreciate that.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you, and I appreciate uh, all the wisdom and brilliance that you bring to not just this podcast, but to the world, to not just the SEO and social media industry, but to humanity. So thank you for that.
Oh, well, right back at you, Stefan. It is always a pleasure to talk to you. Thank you so much for having me on.
Yeah, thank you. Now, listener, you got to go get a Sparktoro account. You can actually get one for free. And Rand, do you want to say something about how you can use Sparktoro for free and not even pay for the account?
The overwhelming majority of folks who use Sparktoro, even a ton of those people who talk about it, and broadcast it, are using it for free. You can go to sparktoro.com, start searching, sign up for a free account, run 10 searches a month for free forever. And we're very excited about the fact that tens of thousands of marketers are getting tons of value from it without paying. That's great. I have no problem with that. I encourage you to do that. If it's helpful and useful to you, and you want to do a bunch more, obviously there's paid plans too, but you don't need to. We're thrilled to just provide this data.
Yeah, that's amazing. All right. Well, thank you, Rand. And again, Sparktoro is SPARKTORO.com. So check it out. And this is your host, Stefan Spencer, signing off.